Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, the new president of the Bethesda Chamber of Commerce presses the county to improve the business climate. County Exec Marc Elrich demands resignation of Charter Review Commission member who criticized him in an op-ed. The city of Rockville ponders the fate of Redgate Golf Course. After 8 weeks, Baltimore City remains crippled by a ransomware attack, and the Supreme Court rules on the Bladensburg Peace Cross. Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the Dean of Democratic Politics, Sam Statland, political strategist, Susan Heltemes, and Maryland Young Republican National Committeeman, Evan Young. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. Montgomery County's reputation as being unfriendly to business was highlighted this week when the incoming president of the influential Bethesda Chamber of Commerce said that his mission was to deliver a message to the county executive and the county council that Montgomery County was falling behind economically. Susan, Andy Stern, the new president of the Bethesda Chamber, has a long-term history as a businessman in this county. Is the county going to listen to this message?
Well, he challenged the county in that, he said we need to do 495, we need to do 270, we need to work more. But I'm beginning to think that he needs to talk to the state too. I just read today that the state of Maryland lost 1,200 jobs last month. So I think it's a big problem. The question is, the council may listen, I don't know what they'll do. The county executive right now doesn't appear to want to hear this message. And so it's going to be an interesting time, and Andy's going to have to do a lot of talking, I think, before they listen.
But the message is being delivered by many others. Sam, Victor Hoskins, who was the chairman of the Arlington County Board of Economic Development, who did snag Amazon to relocate to Arlington County, he was asked, was Montgomery County even a competitor in the competition? He said, no, not really. They're better. There were 3 other choices in Virginia that were far better. So why has Montgomery County become such a joke?
Well, we've had this view of Montgomery County now going on for at least 2 to 3 executives, and I think that it's I think people are not really looking at what's happening. Marc Elrich, for example, completely reworked economic development to make it more efficient. He's doing everything that he can to make us a more friendly place for businesses to come. And I think he's succeeding. And I think in conversations that I've had with business leaders, guys like Andy Stern, who I've known for years, they're saying, well, let's take a break here and let's see what's going to happen. And I think we're doing better.
I just want to throw in, I was in a meeting with Marc Elrich last week for the Taxpayers League meeting, and he said that part of what he's doing is to examine why the county has this reputation of not being business friendly. And it always shocks me when he says this, because he's saying this like he hasn't been around for the last 12 years. I mean, just look at your career on the county council if you need to see why we're not business friendly.
And I think that Marc does have a problem. I would beg to differ a bit in that Marc Elrich voted against every single master plan in the county except 1 or 2. Master plans advise growth. Instead of helping, he just automatically voted against them.
I want to go to you're absolutely right, Susan, but I also want to touch on something. And it's about the county council, Sam. Now, they're about to pass a bill that will allow renters and tenants to terminate a lease if they find any evidence of pest infestation or mold. Now, there's a housing crisis here. Won't this hurt the rental market? Allowing someone who may have created the problem terminate the lease discourages business.
One of the most disappointing things I've ever seen in my life occurred during the last political campaign when a group of citizens and Mr. Eldritch had an open house out in the Burtonsville area. And ladies showed up with pictures of where they lived. with the mold and rats and infestation.
Was that the
I've never
enclave,
seen
I bet?
anything like that in Montgomery County, which resulted in Mark, after he took office, going after the realtor that owned those properties. Now, and making them improve. This will be in court next week. But the goal here is to give people a decent place to live.
You're absolutely right.
Okay, as
You're
far
absolutely
as
right.
the money goes, this is subsidized housing. So to keep it simple, let's just say that the rent is $500 a month. The government subsidizes $300, the tenant pays $2. So the landlord is collecting full rent. Not only is he collecting full rent,
Sam,
but then he's not paying to maintain his properties.
The issue
So it
here
helps.
isn't providing good, safe, habitable homes. That's what the government should be doing. They should be inspecting, and they should be fining these landlords when there's a problem. But the problem is created if a tenant can void a lease just because it claims that it is evidence of mold or evidence of infestation. That's a problem.
Sam,
because sometimes they exacerbate the problem. If they don't, if they live in a slovenly lifestyle, they may be the ones that are attracting the mice, the vermin into that living and dwelling unit.
This came about though because of the enclave, where there were tens of thousands of problems, and there are guidelines.
I understand
so
the enforcement. The enforcement issue is absolutely necessary.
But there are guidelines.
You're taking the enforcement issue and you're putting it into the hands of a tenant that can breach a contract.
But
Casey, your question was whether or not this is going to hurt
the rental market.
The rental market. No, it's not going to hurt it.
Right,
It's going to improve it because people now can move into a development and feel that they'll be safer.
All right.
Those people
And easily get out of it if they want to.
well, and get out of it.
There are guidelines,
I don't know
so
how
you can't
easy it's
just
going
walk
to be
in
because
and
we're
say
just
no.
the guidelines here,
There are
and it's a
guidelines.
30-day period to get out of it.
Look, we all agree we want safe, habitable housing. The question is, what's the best way to do it?
I think this is a good way to do it.
Okay. You get the last word?
Thanks.
Evan, the council is also going forward with a civil review panel, and how's that going to affect the Montgomery County Police?
You know, from what I was reading, I really don't think it will affect them all that much at all because unlike similar panels in other states, as I understand, this one doesn't really have much authority to address disciplinary issues or review complaints or address police-involved incidents. They can make suggestions on policy and what they think should be done and then send that to the council and the police department, but they really don't have as much authority as similar panels in other states because of Maryland law. So maybe they have some good ideas or maybe they're a nuisance, but it really, I don't see it has any effect.
However, acting police chief just yesterday said that applications are way down. And former police chief Tom Angers.
You mean for new recruits?
Yep, it's way down. And when police keep hearing there are going to be citizen panels and all this stuff, it historically it does cut back in recruits. And I saw a chart yesterday, and it's way down. And the acting police chief is really concerned.
Look, when you have a hearing of the police chief, and he's being questioned endlessly about the number of arrests that have been made and stops that have been made for marijuana possession and other things, as if it's a bad thing, it sends a message to these people that you're trying to recruit that the county council may be anti-cop.
When the purpose of this is just the opposite. The idea is to open up conversations between police and citizens to try to develop programs where both can come out ahead of the game, making it safer to be a policeman, safer to be a citizen, and taking away the fear of living.
That's a great idea, but that isn't the way it's perceived by the public and potential cops.
Look, we only have a couple minutes left in this segment, and I want to get to Sam on this. Sam, the county executive, in a speech, launched an attack on Catherine Gugalis, who demanded she resign from the County Review Charter Commission after she criticized the county executive in a letter to the editor. What does this say? What does this say about the leadership ability of Marc Elrich?
She criticized the policy that was being put in place. Mark defended it as executive, but you also know
Then why
that
did he
the
call
chairman
for, why
of
did
the
he call
council,
for her resignation?
chairman of the council, along with other members of the council, also called for the same resignation, because this problem has its roots going back for years and years and years in areas where people would have multiple residents in a home, totally unlicensed, cars parked on driveways, affecting the neighborhood, with lots of upset going on between citizens and enforcement over who lives there, who can live there, what the rent is, et cetera, et cetera.
So
It's about adequate dwelling units, you should
the
say
question,
that.
the question is about free speech.
Look,
And it was-
Doesn't Googlers have the right to free speech
I don't-
and write a
Sometimes-
letter to the editor?
Sometimes free speech, depending upon how it's interpreted, and in this case, not just by Mark, but by an awful lot of people, felt that it was a criticism based on economics, that it was a criticism based on
Then what is wrong
peer
with
and
then,
friends.
then denounce it, but don't call for her resignation. Rebut it.
I don't care how many people, it could be just Marc Elrich or Marc Elrich and 100 other people call for the resignation. We're talking about someone that had an opinion, wrote an op-ed in a newspaper. That's not an offense that should require resignation.
You know, it probably, since she wanted to be on the Charter Review Commission, which is kind of a big deal, it maybe wasn't the smartest thing, but I do believe she does have the right to do that. And that to ask for her to step down because she did speak up, it's all about adequate dwelling ADs, and that's important.
This is about freedom of speech. Sam, this reminds me of President Trump being thin-skinned. Is Marc Elrich just like Donald Trump?
I don't
two
think
seconds.
that he's
Just got a lot less money.
thin-skinned,
You
Casey.
said it. He's
Now we gotta go.
thin-skinned.
Loaded
Now we
questions.
gotta, now we got to go.
At least
to
he's
break.
rich.
8 weeks. When we come back from the short break, 8 weeks and $18 million later, Baltimore City remains tied up by a ransomware attack, and the city of Rockville ponders the future use of Redgate Golf Course. Stay tuned. And welcome back. Evan, on May 7th, Baltimore City suffered a crippling ransomware attack, which has disabled the city's financial system for the past 8 weeks and has cost approximately $18 million and counting. Contrast this to Riviera Beach, Florida, which paid $600,000 to the hackers and was back in business in less than half the time. So maybe Mayor Young was dealt a bad hand since this occurred on his first day in office. But why didn't they just simply pay the ransom and get on with business?
You know, I'm really against paying a ransom. I feel like, first of all, there's nothing in place in Baltimore to stop this from happening again. So
It happened a year ago.
yeah, so if they pay the ransom, well, there's no guarantee, because I'm not in the business of just trusting hackers. There's no guarantee that what they have returned to them is in any sort of working order or even, you know, anything that they can salvage. There's no guarantee that they don't turn around and tomorrow hack them again and demand another ransom. And there's no system in place to, we give you the money, you give us our system back, how do we stop this from happening again? If anything, if there's any money given, they should hire them, because these hackers are the most efficient workers in Baltimore City that I've seen in my lifetime.
mean take
It
the
isn't
18
in
million?
Baltimore City. The thing is that the FBI said don't do it. The FBI worked with them. They've got their system set up. And it isn't just finances, Casey. It was the whole city.
Oh, I know that.
And you know what? They're saying now that as cities pay up, it's going to happen more and more frequently. And they were commended. Don't do it. Let us help you. And they're through
All right.
it.
So,
We as a
And
country
there's-
don't
so,
pay
so
off
they so they
terrorists.
gave the city a gun and said pull the trigger. I mean, honestly,
They do a lot of that in Baltimore.
honestly, the city has been shut down for 8 weeks, and $18 million is just a blip. Real estate transactions can't go forward. The water bills can't be released. You can't get tax liens. You can't do almost any kind of transfer and sale in the city of Baltimore. You can't even get tax certification from
That's
the city.
right.
It's $18 million. I'm sorry, you know.
The
I like
city
Evan's
does-
idea. I think you should hire him.
Hire 'em.
They're more
They're
competent than
probably
anyone in the
someplace
government
in
there.
Ukraine or,
Probably.
they're not in this country.
They did a great job with our election.
All right.
So.
Wonderful, Sam. I like that.
Thank you.
So, Susan, the city of Rockville's meeting to determine the fate of Redgate Golf Course. What do you think should happen to it?
Well, this topic has been in the news for years, and I can't believe they're finally going to pull the club. I did read it's either going to, they want an arboretum, a sports complex, or a music venue. It'd be great for all of those. It's got good traffic. Frankly, I don't give a damn myself. I don't live in Rockville. I don't pay taxes there. May they make the best decision. Whatever the decision they make will be the best.
How about housing? Let's build some
I
houses.
think affordable housing should
Let's
be
build some houses.
Great
we got
place
no,
for
we got
affordable
no
housing.
we got no workforce housing. We got
Exactly.
no moderately priced dwelling units.
Yeah.
Why don't we do housing?
Well, MPDUs come when you build a lot of housing. I don't know why I have not followed this issue. I don't know why they're doing it. I think their thinking is, though, that they want it to be a recreational venue of some sort because they don't have a lot of that in Rockville.
Well, they don't have they need housing in Rockville also. That would also help the tax base in Rockville.
Well, I think you should contact the mayor, Mayor Bridget Newton, and the council and let them know.
All right, I will. I'll do that. Now, Sam, just yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled on that a 40-foot cross honoring soldiers who died in World War I could remain on state property in Bladensburg. The court said it did not violate the First Amendment's ban on government's establishment of religion. So I've heard many people describe this as saying the court said, get over it. It's not a big deal. It's a minor offense. Get on with your lives.
I agree. I've been to military cemeteries in many, many different countries, some of which were actually approved by my wife's grandparents on the Battle Monuments Commission. And when you go through these cemeteries, you see the symbol of a cross on grave after grave after grave, and it reflects the given lives of soldiers who were protecting this country. I've lived in Prince George's and been in this area, all of my life. And to me, Prince George's County, the Peace Cross, always was a symbol honoring our military dead. And I think that the Supreme Court decision was a wise one.
And I think when back in World War I, when they put this monument up, the country was predominantly Christian, and it was a logical thing to do. But in the footnotes of the court decision, it said, this is not going to go for everything. It's like this is one time for this, but don't assume that in the future that every monument case is going to be decided the same way.
Well, that was Alito's opinion. The fact is that Gorsuch and Thomas, who concurred with the opinion, also read separate opinions, and they said that a non-coercive, harmless monument is not an establishment of religion. And there's more and more of a push under constitutional scholars to think that the Establishment of Religion clause only applies to the federal government and not to the states. So
it's to be determined, and it's something to watch.
Well, but this is a change, Susan. This is a major pivot in constitutional interpretation of the Establishment Clause.
But I think that when they looked at this, it was a moment of time when it was constructed also. I think that was a fact.
You have to look at the rationale of the decisions. I mean, the decision. If you've got three justices arguing that the Establishment Clause only applies to the federal government and not to all states, that is a huge change in how you interpret the Establishment Clause. This is a landmark case, and we shouldn't slough it off. We shouldn't slough it off as saying that this is just dealing with a World War I memorial.
But they did say on both sides that this was a kind of benign decision, and that it's going to wait and be determined.
This decision is going to be used as a bedrock for the next decision, which will really adjust the Establishment.
Wait and see.
For example, in the insurance industry, always states' rights have been more important than federal rights. Now, that's kind of how they ruled on this. So that could further strengthen the issue of states' rights over federal rights on a whole variety of issues.
Isn't that what you just said, though?
Well, but the real importance here is the Establishment Clause. I mean, we have seen an expansion of this idea that any governmental approval of a religious symbol is violated of the Constitution. And I think the message now is that trend is certainly reversing, at least it is with this Supreme Court panel. It's going to be different.
It's going to be interesting to watch.
It's all pretty simple for me. Absolutely nobody is forced to interact with that monument, do anything with that monument. If you don't like it, you never even have to look at it.
Except our taxpayers are paying for it. Maryland taxpayers are paying for the upkeep. That's
Yeah, well,
the
we
only
pay for a lot of stuff we don't want to.
Well, that could be.
Well, you
I
know,
love
the
paying
one
taxes.
question we didn't get to today, and I'm sorry we didn't get to, was about the vaping issue. I see this monumental movement to ban vaping and to restrict it to people who are age 21 and above. And I quite frankly don't get it, because vaping is not as dangerous as smoking cigarettes.
No,
there may be dangers to it, but it's not as dangerous as
It's
smoking
actually worse because they lace the nicotine with other things. There were 5 people
They
who
lace
passed.
it. Well, look, if it's vaping of tobacco, it's not as bad as.
I know,
smoking
but
cigarettes.
people
we gotta wrap it up. Stay tuned for parting shots when we come back from the short break. And welcome back. Now with parting shots, Susan Heltemes.
When the President of the United States was inaugurated, Steve Bannon said gleefully that we're going to destruct government. Well, they're doing a good job of it. This week they announced, I think it was yesterday actually, announced new coal regulations. And within the document it said these regulations will add up to 1,400 extra people dying each year, and they went ahead with it anyway. The president also says he's going to get rid of OPM, and if the Congress doesn't vote for his proposed legislation to get rid of it, he's just going to fire the people at OPM. And something that affects us here in Maryland is their decision to take 2 research science departments and move them to Kansas. The people involved are highly educated, many doctors doing research. They've got 30 days to go to Kansas or they'll probably be out. The problem is this agency did a lot of scientific research and market research that the president didn't like. So he's going to put them in Kansas, and the story goes it's going to be eliminated. That's really unfortunate.
Sam, your parting shot.
I have a big surprise for everybody. We actually have a baseball team that's winning ball games. And I think that, tonight we have a great series going against Atlanta. We took the majority against Philadelphia. And if we can do the same thing against Atlanta, we could be a real contender. Support those Nats.
Thank you, Sam. Evan.
All right, so fellas, I've got an issue we need to address. I was reading an article recently that said the dad bod, which is just a code word for being fat. The dad bod was gaining popularity again. Women found it more attractive than a guy who's actually in shape, and that guys who have a dad bod said that they feel more comfortable and at ease and accept themselves better. Guys, you should never accept yourself when you can improve yourself. Don't fall for this just because some people let their bodies take on the consistency of the expired gravy in the refrigerator does not mean you have to. And no matter what, guys, if your woman tells you, I love you just the way you are, when she closes her eyes, she's not picturing your doughy, undefined body. Don't fall for it. I'm convinced this was funded by the sugar industry.
Well, thank you, Evan. I won't take that personally. Because even though it's been 45 years and 45 pounds since my college graduation, I'm certainly not going to take umbrage at it. I don't really have a party shot tonight, but I was reminded when Susan was talking about the Department of Agriculture employees being transferred to Kansas City, which is a lovely town, by the way, just across the state or the river from the great state of Kansas, where my family's from. When I worked for the federal government, it was a well-known fact that if there was an employee that you wanted to get rid of, you would transfer them to one of the offices in the regions. It was no surprise that 99 times out of 10, they found a job that would in a different agency before that transfer went into effect. So this is a long honored tradition, Susan, and we'll see what becomes of it.
Not if OPM disappears.
Well, OPM isn't going into GSA. There's just
they're
a
getting
bunch
rid
of
of it.
dominoes. They just shuffle them around. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. This is a great review of what the county and the state is doing. And I want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.